Once again, here I am, and there you are. Now, this is how you can trick your brain to like doing difficult things. So we got the dopamine detox, right? So let's get started. So you probably don't have a problem playing video games or browsing social media on your phone or your computer, watching YouTube, TikTok. You're watching YouTube now, but TikTok videos. I don't really have a doubt that you could sit in front of a screen and do these activities for 2 hours or even longer without even breaking your concentration. But what about just a half an hour of studying in a book, a physical book, right? That might be a bit more difficult. How about working on your side business for another hour? Maybe you got a little side hustle going on is what the term is today. Maybe you're trying to start a business, right? Maybe you're watching some other videos to learn something important to you, right? To create some sort of habit, but you need the knowledge to do so. So that doesn't really sound appealing, but you logically know that studying, exercising, building a business, something equally productive of those things will bring you more benefits in the long run, but you're still going to sit there on your couch eating Cheetos, playing with your phone, or playing video games. So now you can comprehend which is easier for you to do because you're already doing these things, right? It doesn't require any effort whatsoever. It's brain numbing. You don't need to think. You don't need to process anything. You just look at stuff and chuckle, right? The application of yourself and the application of the mind to focus on studying something to better yourself or do something to better yourself, not just studying, but also do physical activity. It's going to benefit you, and you know that it will, right? Whereas you know that playing that video game is not going to do anything for you except waste time. So you're sitting in a cesspool of what we call consumerism in the matrix, just consuming things and not actually producing anything. Okay, some people have no problem studying, exercising, or working out on any of their other side projects regularly. Well, how the hell do they do that? So, why are some people more motivated to tackle these difficult things that we consider difficult, right? Is there a way to make doing these things easier? So to answer this question, we need to look at the brain's neurotransmitter called dopamine. Okay? Dopamine is often considered a pleasurable molecule, but it's not precisely what it does. Okay? It makes us desire things. And it is that desire that gives us the motivation to get up and do stuff. Okay? If you're not sure how powerful it is, let me introduce you to a few of these dopamine experiments. So neuroscientists did these studies, did this particular study on rats. Okay? The researchers implanted electrodes in the brains of these rats. Right? Whenever the rat pulled a lever, the researchers stimulated the rat's reward system of the brain. Okay? The result was that the rats developed a craving so strongly that they kept pulling the lever over and over for like hours. We're talking rats here. So, 1 day to a human is like 5 days to a rat. So an hour is like, a long time for a rat, right? So the rats will refuse to even eat or sleep. They would just keep pressing the lever until they would drop from exhaustion. So then the process was actually reversed. They blocked the release of dopamine in the brain's reward center. As a result, the rats became so lethargic that even getting up to get a drink of water was not even worth the effort. They wouldn't eat. Okay? So now we can see that in society as today. People don't want to do these things because they don't have any reward center in their brain. Their dopamine is just not there. So they did not want to mate. They didn't want to crave anything at all. You could say that the rats lost all will to live. Sounds like depression, doesn't it? However, if food was placed directly into their mouths, the rats would still eat and enjoy the food. They just didn't have the motivation to get up and do it themselves. You would think that it's their thirst or hunger would actually motivate them to eat the food and water, but it did not. But there's also dopamine that plays a key role in this, right? Those rat experiments might be extreme cases, but you can see the similar effect that dopamine has on the humans in our daily lives. Because in another video, I mentioned that the dopamine levels, we're talking about pleasure and pain. Okay? So if the dopamine level was towards the pain point of, you know what, I'm just not going to do anything, which is where we're looking at what I'm looking at in depression of people, even to the point of suicide, is they just don't think that life is worth it anymore. So the only motivation they do have is to end the life, right? So in your brain, right, your brain actually develops priorities in large part based on how much dopamine is expecting to get. If an activity releases too little dopamine, you won't have much motivation to do it, right? But if an activity releases a lot of dopamine, you'll be motivated to do it repeatedly. So which behaviors actually release the dopamine? So any activity where you, this particular individual, you particularly anticipate there's a potential reward will actually release the dopamine ahead of time. Okay? But if you know that there are no immediate rewards within that behavior, your brain will just not do anything because there's no immediate gratification. So, for example, before you eat comfort food, your brain is going to release dopamine because you anticipate the food will make you feel good. You're going to have that piece of cake or whatever your favorite food is going to be. Just thinking about your favorite food is going to release some dopamine because you know it tastes good. It's going to make you feel so much better. Even if it actually makes you feel worse. Oh, man, I shouldn't have ate that whole freaking cake. I feel like 50 pounds heavier. I can't do anything. I'm going to loosen up my pants. Sit here and eat and watch Netflix. It's because your brain does not care if the high dopamine activity is damaging to you as a whole. It just wants more dopamine. It's a drug. It's literally a chemical that your body creates. It's dopamine. It's a fucking chemical. It's a drug that your body creates, and it gives you pleasure. It does not care, just like the rats. It does not care that it's going to be bad for you. So a stereotypical example will be someone who's basically a drug addict, right? He knows that what he or she is doing is not good for him, but all he wants is to get more of that drug. Besides getting you high, cocaine and heroin release unnatural amounts of dopamine, which in turn makes you crave them even more. So, of course, it has to be noted that nearly everything releases some amount of dopamine. Even drinking water when you're thirsty releases dopamine because it just feels so good because you're just thirsty and you gotta have it. The highest dopamine release happens when you get rewarded randomly. One such example is playing like a slot machine in a casino, right? Even if you've only been losing money until that point, you eventually expect to get a bigger reward. You just don't know exactly when it's going to happen. And in today's digital society, we are flooding our brains with unnaturally high amounts of dopamine on a daily basis, and actually an hourly basis or a minute-by-minute basis with this TikTok and a few other things, right? Even if we don't know this, right? It's the feeling that you get. That's why you look at TikTok for one or two things and you end up spending 20 or 30 minutes on there, right? You didn't expect to do that, but that dopamine just keeps going, right? Some examples of high dopamine behaviors include scrolling through social media websites, TikTok, right? Playing video games, watching internet porn, those types of things, right? We anticipate some sort of rewards with each one of these particular behaviors. That's why we're constantly checking our phones. We expect to see a text message or some other notification, right? And we know that eventually we're going to receive that thing. We're becoming like those rats pulling on that lever, trying to get a new dopamine hit, right? And you might think, yeah, so what? I mean, it's not harming anybody really, right? You'd be dead freaking wrong. Okay? You'd be absolutely dead wrong. Okay? Our bodies have a biological system called homeostasis. It means that our body likes to keep internal physical and chemical conditions at a balanced level. Okay? Whenever an imbalance occurs, our body is going to adapt to it. We get too much pleasure, we're going to get some pain, right? We're going to inflict it upon ourselves. So here's an example. So when it's cold outside, your body temperature is going to fall. As a result, we start to shiver, which generates heat and warms the body. Okay? However, when it's hot outside, our body temperature is going to rise and we start sweating to lose some of that heat through sweat. So essentially, our body is looking to maintain a temperature around 37 degrees Celsius or maybe 98 or 97 degrees Fahrenheit for the internal temperature of the body, right? No matter what, that's what the homeostasis is all about. You start to sweat, you're like a little bit uncomfortable because it's too hot, it's too cold, so you start to shiver, so your body, makes up that heat, right? There's another way of homeostasis, there's another way that homeostasis manifests itself, okay? And that's through tolerance. For example, someone who rarely drinks alcohol will get drunk very, very fast. But somebody who drinks on a regular basis will have to drink more alcohol because their tolerance, or their body tolerance has increased substantially. Essentially, it takes more and more alcohol to make them drunk because they've become less sensitive to the effects of the alcohol. So it's not any different whatsoever from the dopamine fix. Your body tries to maintain homeostasis, so it down-regulates your dopamine receptors. Okay? Essentially, your brain gets used to having high levels of dopamine, and those levels become your new normal level. Thus, you develop a dopamine tolerance. This can be a huge problem because the things that don't give you as much dopamine, well, they don't interest you anymore. And it's much more difficult to motivate yourself to actually do these things. They feel boring. They feel less fun because they don't release as much dopamine, right, compared to the things that do release it in higher amounts. So, it could backfire on you. So the stuff that you used to enjoy doing doesn't give you as much dopamine because you've grown, you developed a tolerance for it. Okay? That's why people tend to prefer playing video games or browsing the internet compared to studying or working on their business. Video games make us feel good and comfortable as they release a lot of dopamine. Okay? Sadly, things like working hard or reading releases dopamine in very, very low amounts because the reward is not immediate, and I'm not going to get my paycheck until the end of the week, and my paycheck is not enough for the work that I do, blah, blah, blah. Because I want that. I want to buy a freaking 3 Porsches instead of, a car to get me back and forth to work. Right. Sorry about that. So, tricking your brain into doing the hard things. That's what we're talking about. This is one of the reasons why drug addicts who try to quit have a hard time adjusting to a normal life. Their dopamine tolerance gets so high that normal life can't match it, right? Normal life can't match what they were doing when they were doing drugs because they were off in la-la land. They become like those rats from the previous experiments who had no motivation to do anything, right? If there's not enough dopamine released, they don't want to do it. And it's not just the drug addicts. This is for people that are addicted to video games, to social media, to the internet, to pornography, right? They all experience the same thing. Once their dopamine tolerance gets too high, they simply are not able to enjoy low dopamine behaviors. So now, here's the question. Is there anything that can be done to prevent this? The answer is you need to perform a dopamine detox. By now, you might have already idea what a dopamine detox is going to look like. So what you're going to do is set aside a day where you're going to avoid all the highly stimulating activities. You're going to stop flooding your brain with high amounts of dopamine, and you're going to let your dopamine receptors recover. Just a disclaimer, if you're suffering from like a drug addiction, then I suggest you seek professional help. As you perform, you've probably formed a psychological and a physiological dependence on these items. I don't want you to experience any extreme withdrawal symptoms. So now back to the detox. For one whole day, you'll have as little fun as possible. Right? You're not going to be using the internet. You're not going to be using any technology, your phone, your computer, none of that stuff. Okay? You're not allowed to listen to music. You're not allowed to masturbate. You're not allowed to have sex. You're not allowed to eat any junk food, anything that makes you feel good, which is a release of dopamine. You need to bring those levels down so that when you do the studying, that those dopamine levels will go up, or they'll seem like they go up. Basically, you're going to remove all sources of external pleasure for the entire day. You're going to embrace boredom, and trust me, there will be a lot of it. You are, however, allowed to do the following. You can go for a walk. You can meditate. You can be alone with your thoughts, right? Reflect on your life goals. Write down any ideas that you get in a journal. Not on your computer phone, a physical piece of paper. We still have those. All of this might seem quite intense, but if you want radical results, you want them fast, you need to be able to take radical actions. You might be asking yourself, why would this even work? You can think of it this way, right? Let's say you've been eating every single meal at the best restaurant in town. As a result, what happened is you lose those fancy meals and now become normal for you. If someone offered you a bowl of plain rice, you'd probably refuse it. If you simply wouldn't taste as good as your usual restaurant meal, right? If you suddenly find yourself stranded on a desert island and now you're starving, suddenly that bowl of rice doesn't seem so bad after all, right? That's what the dopamine detox is going to do. It starves you of all the pleasure you usually get, and in turn, it makes those less satisfying activities a lot more desirable. To put it simply, dopamine detox works because you become so bored that the boring stuff becomes more fun. Okay? So it sounds extreme, but so let's see if you don't want to take such an extreme action as to starve yourself of the pleasures, right? You can perform a smaller dopamine detox. You're going to pick one day of the week, let's say Friday, right? When you're going to refrain from one of your high dopamine behaviors completely. So like no social media, but you can still play your video game, right? Maybe checking your phone all the time, playing video games on your computer, binge watching TV, junk food, watching pornography, whatever it is that you get your dopamine fix. Every single week for one whole day, you're going to avoid that particular activity. You can still do these other things, but the behavior you pick is actually off limits. You'll feel slightly bored, and that's actually the point. Now, here's the kicker. You know, if you okay, I'm going to swear off my phone, but that does not mean that I go and play video games in that stead, right? So you're substituting one for the other. So if you need to know how much time you spend on these video games, you need to know how much junk food you're going to be eating, right? And maybe you just want to, what I would probably do is just swear off all of it, because I have that kind of discipline and I have that kind of motivation, right? 0 electronics for a whole day and 0 junk food. Anything that gives me that dopamine fix. You know, maybe I am eating that bowl of rice, maybe a little bit of furikake or some spice on the rice, and that's all I'm eating, right? So what is it to you that you believe that you need to detox from? Because there is such a thing as, psychologists, psychiatrists come up with the video game addiction, right? It's also social media addiction. It's also they're types of addictions, right? But they're just not talking about them because, well, it's normal. Everybody is addicted. But it is no different from cocaine, from crack, from any other drug that destroys your body, right? It's just that the physical drugs destroy your body as well as your mind, whereas the electronics just destroy your mind. There is no physical symptoms of the destruction of your body, right? You want to let your dopamine receptors recover from the unnaturally high dopamine that's been flooding into your brain. And boredom is going to propel you to do other things for that particular day. Things that you would normally put off because they don't release the amount of dopamine that you want. Maybe you need to clean your house. Go look at the 8 steps to un-F your life, right? Maybe you're going to go to the grocery to get healthier food, right? Because you're bored, it's easier to do the things that do not release as much dopamine as you're used to getting through these electronic media. Of course, avoiding high dopamine behavior once in a while is going to be good, but ideally, you should be avoiding those behaviors altogether or as much as possible. But in today's society, it's going to be extremely difficult to do that. Instead, you want to connect with more dopamine. You want to connect to more dopamine to the things that you will actually benefit from, the things that benefit you. Maybe going to the gym and working out. Doesn't give you as much dopamine as that video game, but that's why we're doing the dopamine detox, to get you out of that state so that you can go do the things that you know is going to improve your life. So what we're going to find is that your current high dopamine levels, right, the things that actually give you those long, you're going to be switching, right, the dopamine levels so you can feel that things that are bad for you that used to give you those high dopamine levels, which is the marketing and brainwashing that they're doing through media and these games. And you're going to switch that into things that are going to help you with your life, to fix your effed up life, right? If you have issues, you know what you need to do. Everybody has already told you what you need to do since you were a little kid. If you want to look sexy, if you want to act sexy, you got to be sexy. How do you do that? You go to the gym and you work out, especially if you're a man, right? You don't have as much body fat. Now you can move a lot better. You'll have a lot more energy, and you'll be able to do things that most people, they don't even want to do these things because they're too busy sitting on their couch, eating Cheetos, playing the video games, getting those dopamine fixes. They're a consumer. They are not a capitalist. They're not a producer. They're not doing things for the rest of the world. They're just sitting there, consuming like an insect, annoying, taking things up, talking smack about nothing, right? You could use your high dopamine activity as a reward for completing your difficult work as well. I just went to the gym for an hour. I did my workout, I took a shower, got in the sauna, felt really good, came home. Now I can do 30 minutes, like a little bit. Now we're not talking, well, I spent an hour in the gym, now I'm going to do 5 hours of video. No, it don't work like that. There's no equality there. Maybe at first you could do maybe an hour or so, but you need to have discipline to cut yourself off from those dopamine fixes. Like, okay, I'm going to reward myself after going to the gym with this dopamine fix of playing a video game, or maybe check my social media for 30 minutes. Set a timer on your phone. Have a countdown clock or something that goes beep, 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 and you're done. Okay? But that's only if it's difficult work, right? Going to the gym, I go to the gym anyway, but I do not consider going to the gym difficult work. Maybe doing some intense study, you're studying a new language or something. Hey, maybe I need to check that out. Maybe I need to check social media in the new language that I just learned, or the language that I'm trying to learn. Maybe I need to check out some websites in Spain or Mexico or something if I'm studying Spanish. If I'm studying Portuguese, maybe I need to check out a social media post stuff in those countries. You get the picture, okay? So what can you do to get those dopamine levels, but also make them focus on the stuff that you need to better your life? Because you know what you need to do. So this is what you should do. Track all of the difficult, low dopamine work that you do. Okay? So cleaning your apartment or your house, practicing a musical instrument, reading some books, doing some sort of exercise. Maybe you need to go out and chop some wood. Maybe you need to do a little bit more homesteading stuff, fix the fence, cut the grass, right? The stuff that you don't necessarily like to do. After you're able to get a certain amount of work done, you can reward yourself with some sort of high dopamine activity towards the end of the day. So you go ahead and you go through and you do all this work stuff, right? Cleaning, maybe doing some cooking, some reading, going to the gym, cutting the grass, doing the housework, cleaning up the house. Then maybe you get an hour of looking at social media, maybe playing a video game, right? For 1 hour, for the high dopamine fix, to congratulate yourself, to celebrate what you have done throughout the day. The key word here is after, and at the end of the day. Okay? If you indulge in a high dopamine behavior first, then I'm not going to feel like doing any of the work that absolutely must be done throughout the day. Right? You don't want to do the low dopamine work. You got that big ass fix. You're good for a while. You're not going to be motivated to do the things that you know that you need to do. And besides that, there are plenty of studies that show that most of the work is done in the first part of the day, right? Always start with the difficult things, and only after you're done with those difficult things, allow yourself to indulge in the high dopamine activities, right? So another example would be, for every completed hour of low dopamine work, reward yourself with 15 minutes of high dopamine behavior at the end of the day. Okay? That means for 8 hours of low dopamine work, or whatever you want to call it, allow yourself about 2 hours of high dopamine fixes. So these would be my ratios. Well, they're not actually my ratios. I allow myself a lot less, right? Maybe 5 minutes for every 1 hour, because I do not see a benefit towards my life in a video game. I do not see my benefit to life in social media, except for pushing, my books or my business, right? Because quite honestly, I consider this, which is making videos, part of my social media fix. Does it give me a high level of dopamine? No, not really, because it is actual work, and I got to put stuff in my notes and then make comments on those notes as I'm talking to you, which is why I change up my stuff a little bit and start running down rabbit holes. Well, that doesn't flow right. But I'm telling you what I'm thinking at the moment. I don't redo videos, at least not now, and I don't think I'm ever going to, because I need to keep it as real as possible. So it has to be noted that if you're addicted to something that's damaging to your health, then you don't want to treat that behavior as a reward. You don't freaking, oh man, I spent 8 hours, I'm going to drink a bottle of Jack Daniels. Watch me. I'm going to time it. I only got 2 hours to drink this entire bottle. Don't do that. These are the things that are damaging your body. Why would you even want to do that? It makes you feel good in the moment, but you know damn well it's damaging your body. Everybody knows it's damaging to your body. So another reward that's not as damaging, still one that you think is kind of worth the effort. Maybe you want to play a video game for a couple hours, but make sure you set your timers. Establish your discipline and stick with it. If you need extra help, I'll have to put out some hypnosis tracks for you to just do what needs to be done, right? Because you're already in a matrix video game called life, and you're checking out by going into another video game, and usually that video game involves a lot more violence than what you have in your life, because most video games today, you're killing something, right? Because that's what sells, because you can't do it in real life, but you just want to kill people, right? So you play these video games. You steal things, right? You do whatever the video game allots you to do, and that's why you purchase that video game, because you want to do all that stuff, right? That is destructive behavior at its finest. Because once you start believing start believing in absurdities, then you will begin to think that it's okay to do atrocities. So, what is your guilty pleasure? Is it the internet? Is it a video game? Right? Is it TikTok? Other social media on the internet? Is it, the pornography, which is kind of just super destructive? I would put that in the same category as alcohol, but for your dopamine fix, you gotta do what you gotta do to reward yourself of these things. It's really, really easy to get lost in the internet. That's why you need to control your addiction through a timer. If you have a phone, you have a stopwatch, you have a timer, you have a countdown timer, you have all kinds of stuff on your damn phone. Use it to help you, right? And just because the timer doesn't go off does not mean that you are not supposed to quit early. If you don't feel like doing it, then don't do it, right? Don't force yourself into the, especially the high dopamine things that you're brainwashed, programmed into developing high dopamine levels through the internet and through social media and through the media itself. Make no mistake, even with the system, you should still plan the no dopamine activities completely. So that means you still do the work, but you don't reward yourself at the end of the day for the dopamine activity. Okay? So to conclude, I'd like to say that it is possible to make difficult things feel easier through this process, because I've done it myself. So when your brain is getting so much more dopamine all the time, you won't be as excited, right? Working on something that doesn't really release that much of it. So you want to limit your phone and your computer usage along with other high dopamine releasing behavior, the junk food, the pornography, the other things that give you that high dopamine level. It has worked for me, and it continues to work for me all the time. So if you have motivation problems, start dopamine detoxing your brain as soon as possible. Separate yourself from the unnaturally high amounts of dopamine, or at least expose yourself to it far less frequently, right? We're getting you off of a drug called the internet. We're getting you off of a drug called dopamine, right? These are the things we're trying to detox you from, right? Only then will normal, everyday, low dopamine activities become exciting again, and you'll be able to do them for a lot longer period of time. We are all dopamine addicts to an extent, and that's a good thing, because dopamine motivates us to achieve our goals and to improve. It improves ourselves, right? It's up to you to decide where you're going to get your dopamine from. Are you going to get it from things that do not benefit you? I mean, what kind of production are you able to do when you're playing a video game? How is that going to benefit you in your life? Maybe you're a video gamer and you're actually making money on it. Good for you. But for most of us, that is not the case. We're not making money off of playing video games, right? And is that your purpose in this life? Is that your passion? Or is it, do not confuse your passion with a high dopamine fix. Okay, do not do it, because sooner or later you're going to realize that you've been doing this stuff and it's not what you're supposed to be doing in this life. It's not giving you the love and motivation that you really need to be giving to yourself. You're hurting yourself. You're not giving giving yourself the unconditional love that you know that you need to be giving to yourself and to others. Right? Because it's not all about just you. Most of it is just about you, okay? But when you're not contributing to others' well-being, when you're not contributing to society, it affects you internally. It truly does. So I leave it to you now. The choice is yours. This is how to detox from the dopamine, and this is how you can get out and motivate yourself a little bit more to do the things that you know that you have to do to better your life. Not your online life, that's completely separate, right? This is to benefit you and your body, the temple, right? This is how you should, or what I think you should. I'm not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. You're going to have to make your own decisions for yourself. You are your own person. So do what you should be doing, and I'm glad that you came to this point in the video, and hopefully you'll take the advice in this video and do some dopamine detox and find the pleasure in the book. Find the pleasure in the studies. I'm not talking about going back to school, because that's just boring and droning. Get into some courses. Udemy, they got plenty of courses that you could do to better yourself, right? Start your own business, right? It's a pain in the butt, but the issue is it's going to do something for you in the future and for your children and your children's children to build a business or maybe buy a business. I don't know. I don't know where you're at. There are plenty of baby boomers that are getting rid of their business, and a lot of them are just locking the door and throwing away the key, where you could just walk in there and just take over the business and maybe give them 10% for about 5 years, and they'd be perfectly happy doing that. You don't know what you don't know. Do you want Walmart to take over everything? Do you want the big business and the big corporations to take over everything and then jack the prices up as they are? Or do you want to support the local economy by maybe buying a laundromat, buying a car wash? So instead of the owner just, my kids don't want to do it because they're playing video games, or my grandchildren don't want to do it because, they're playing video games with their father and mother. A steady income will be quite important, but it's freaking boring as hell. Making money most of the time is going to be boring. Okay? That's just the way that society is set up today. If you want to make it exciting, one of the ways to do it is to lower your dopamine levels through the dopamine detox, then do the activity. Okay? Then you'll feel the pleasure in the nuanced things. It's like you go into a restaurant or you're cooking food and you put all kinds of spices on it and it tastes the way that it tastes. But if you look at the recipe, you only should have used a teaspoon when you use 5 pounds of taco spices because you wanted that extra taco flavor or because your taste buds have grown used to it. Now, in order to detox that, you eat nothing but rice, chicken, zero seasoning. Then, and only then, can most people taste the nuanced differences in the little bit of spices here and there. Detox yourself from the dopamine. Detox yourself pretty much from everything. Get back to what it is to be a man, mankind. And when I say man or men, it is mankind, because woman is a part of man, but the original term is man. Okay? It is plural, men, for the idea of mankind. I'm not talking about human. Look up the Papal Decree of 1302 to find out what human actually means. Okay? So I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about mankind. So, once again, thank you for listening. Here's a dopamine detox. And I hope that this helps you, and I hope that you follow through and do some of this stuff. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it is simple, and it is effective.